Well, let's demystify it. I looked it up. I looked up the symbol. What does that symbol that represents meditation mean? And the actual translation of the word means to become familiar with. That's what it means. So then when you become conscious of your unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions, and become familiar with them, if you can become so conscious that you don't go unconscious and you're facing off with your old self and you have those thoughts, you're in a meditation, that's a good thing, right? And if you can fire and wire the new thoughts and rehearse the new behaviors and practice trading the chemicals of survival for elevated emotions, and you keep practicing those heart-centered emotions, they'll begin to become familiar to you. So breaking the habit of the old self and reinventing the new self, unlearning and relearning is the model of change, okay? But when you're living in stress and you're living in survival and the brain is aroused, what we're doing when we lost control or we can't predict what's going to happen is we try to control and predict everything in our life. And the arousal of the stress hormones causes our brain to move in these brainwave states called high beta. Now, we're talking right now and we're in low-level beta. We're in beta. And beta is conscious awareness. So we're aware that we're local in a body. We're occupying a body in space and time, in an environment and time. And the sensory system is picking up all this vital information through our senses from the environment. And beta brainwaves happen to create coherence between our inner world and our outer world. No problem there. If I said, oh, there'll be a dinner tonight, and I'm going to invite you. There'll be 10 people there, and please just remember all their names. Your brain would kind of pick up into like a mid-range beta state. It's not a bad stress. It's just that you got to get a little bit, the light bulb gets a little brighter. You got to get a little bit more aware, a little bit more awake. But when you're frustrated, when you're angry, when you're impatient, when you're resentful, when you're fearful, you're in these high beta brainwave patterns. And then that high beta is the alarm, it's the alert, it's emergency, there's a threat, there's a danger. So we shift our attention from one person, to another problem, to another meeting, to another thing, to another place, to the past. And every one of those circuits in our brain that are associated with everything we know in our life starts to light up out of order, like a lightning storm in the cloud, because our attention is shifting. Turns out the brain starts firing very incoherently, and we over-focus on things. Why? Because we don't want them to happen again. And so the arousal causes this incoherence in the brain, and when the brain is incoherent, we're incoherent. And the person in survival, the primitive system is saying, focus on matter, narrow your focus on the danger, focus on something material. And why does that happen? Because the senses heighten and we become materialists. So you're not going to be thinking about anything else if something's rustling in the bushes and it's dark. You're going to pay attention to that, right? So this kind of habituation of narrowing our focus or over-focusing becomes the common way people think when they're in survival. They think that's focus. So we said, okay, how are we going to teach people how to change waves? So what if they go from a narrow focus and focusing on objects in the material world to broadening their focus, or creating a divergent focus instead of a convergent focus, and opening their focus and focusing on nothing but space, nothing known, nothing material. And the act of sensing space tends to slow the brain waves down and start to suppress the analytical mind. When you're in survival, you're in stress, you're overly analytical. And our research shows that if you're analyzing yourself, and you're analyzing the problems in your life within that aroused emotional state, 100% of the time you'll make your brain worse. You'll drive it further into those high beta states, and that's like driving your sports car in first gear on the freeway. It just won't work in time. So as you broaden your focus and you sense nothing, the act of sensing and feeling causes you to stop analyzing and thinking, and your brain waves start to go down into a slower brainwave state, and you get past the analytical mind and you move into what's called alpha brainwaves. Now, alpha brainwaves, in beta, your outer world is more real than your inner world. In alpha, your inner world starts becoming more real than the outer world, and the voice in your head, that default that's talking to you all the time, tends to shut off, and the brain starts to imagine. It starts to see in images and pictures. That's alpha. It's an imaginary state. It's a creative state. But when you're sensing space, what happens that's so unique is those different compartments of the brain that were subdivided when the person is sensing space not only moves into alpha, the brain starts to synchronize. A different communities of neurons that were firing out of order start to resonate in coherence and order, and the front of the brain is starting to resonate with both sides of the brain, and all of a sudden you're seeing more community of neurons coming together, and what syncs in the brain links in the brain. Now, when the person has coherent alpha brainwave patterns, now all of a sudden the brain becomes more integrated, and they can start to hold an image and focus or dream or imagine. We all do this when we're driving in the car on the freeway, okay? There's nothing wrong with that. But then if you can get your body to relax even further so that it's in a light sleep, that it feels so safe that it could actually rest in a light sleep while you're conscious and awake, relaxed and awake, you're in a brainwave pattern called theta. Now, in theta, lights go out in the thinking neocortex. The memory bank, the autobiographical self, is literally shut off. Your connection to the environment, to your body and to time literally changes. If lights go out in the neocortex, then you get beyond your identity. And we see then, when a person's in theta, the door between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind is wide open to information. And when you get beyond the analytical mind, then you open door between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. That's what separates it, the analytical mind. Now you're suggestible to the information. You're in a hypnotic state, and you can rewrite a program. You can rewrite a new script. You can change the way you behave. You can change the way you can reprogram yourself to do something differently. And you can't do it in high beta because you're not in the operating system. You got to get beyond the conscious mind into the subconscious mind to rewrite those programs. So teaching people how to regulate and change their brainwaves is an important element. But what about the heart? Because to create a new future, it requires a clear intention and an elevated emotion. It is the fundamental quality of brain and heart coherence. So then can you practice breathing through your heart and practice regulating your heart and practice bringing up these elevated emotions and feel it with your heart? And our data suggests that if you place your attention on your heart and you just do that for a few minutes, you'll actually give the heart a very low frequency, and that very low frequency is indigenous to the energy of the heart. So the heart starts building a little energetic field. Once that happens, the heart will inform the brain through the afferent fibers. They'll say, it's time to create, or it's safe to create. And when the heart gets coherent, it sends a very profound signal, like grabbing a big sheet and giving it a little whip. There's a wave of energy that goes to the brain, and all of a sudden you see the heart and the brain start synchronizing. And now we're in a creative state. And the heart produces an external magnetic field that's up to 3 meters wide, and now we start feeling more whole. Now we feel like our future has already happened, and we're no longer looking for it. Why would we look for it if it felt like it already happened? And we're really relaxing into the present moment. So teaching people how to regulate their brain waves and move into these slower frequencies, people get really good at it, and we have the data that suggests you could be 91, you could be 7 years old, you could have a disease, you could not have a disease, you could eat gluten, not eat gluten, you could eat meat, you could drink wine, you could smoke cigarettes. It doesn't matter. It's just people, once they learn the skill on how to change their brainwaves, they can open the door between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. But intention is not enough. Intention is the directive. It's like the electrical charge in the field. The elevated emotion is the magnetic charge. It's what feels like the future has already happened for us. So brain and heart coherence, when you do that together, in a sense, you have a Wi-Fi signal. The body's emitting information and energy. And so we teach that as a way for people to really practice getting beyond their analytical facilities. And when they're able to do that, as we said over and over in this talk, it just becomes natural. It just becomes automatic. It just becomes a skill.